Right now, I want to welcome to the program from Jacob from Reason Magazine, Jacob Sullum. Jacob, how you doing, sir?
Okay, how are you?
I'm excellent. Appreciate you coming on the program, and greatly appreciate your column about Shaneen Allen. Can a gun owner get justice in New Jersey? I mean, the answer is so far no, but we'll see. Jacob, you write a lot about these sort of incredible stories that when Americans read about this, they wonder, wow, how can this be going on here? But Shaneen Allen, I mean, I've yet to find anybody, Jacob, beyond the prosecutor in this case, who thinks that Shaneen Allen deserves to spend any time behind bars, much less a minimum of 3.5 years in prison for what she did.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing that they think it's appropriate. I'll tell you, this column got a big positive response from my brother, who's pretty right-wing, very right-wing, I would say, and a friend of mine who's quite left-wing, who's a sort of civil libertarian. For my brother, the gun angle appealed to him, and for my lefty friend, it was the criminal justice angle. So I think there's something to upset people across the political spectrum about this case, including the fact that she didn't do it on purpose. I mean, that's the thing probably that strikes most people, that she clearly, from the way that she was caught, we know that she really thought it was legal for her to carry the gun across the border into New Jersey, that her carry permit would be respected there. And not an insane thought either, because it is respected in 29 other states, just not New Jersey. And when she was stopped for an unsafe lane change, she volunteered that she had a gun in the car, as people with carry permits are told to do. And she showed the state trooper her carry permit and told him about the gun, and that's how she got charged with this crime that could send her to prison for years. Had she not said anything, she never would have had a problem, except for a ticket, maybe. So it's clear that she didn't know that she was breaking a law. Now, the gun control advocates will say it doesn't matter. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. But I think it is a pretty good excuse. It seems like it's a mitigating circumstance at the very least, right? And I think that her attorney is going to argue that. When they go to trial, I think he will be allowed to say, she thought she didn't realize this was against the law, and the jury can give that as much weight as it wants. And I think that if, assuming there is nullification, which I hope there will be in this case, it will be based on that argument. I think he's not allowed to directly argue that they should ignore the law, but I think he's going to emphasize that it was not a deliberate violation. I don't think he's going to make a Second Amendment argument. Although, to my mind, that may not fly in court, but New Jersey's rules about who may carry and who may not are totally arbitrary and don't seem at all consistent with a right to bear arms.
Well, yeah, I would certainly agree with you there. And you're right. I mean, I think, again, this is not a case of somebody say, well, I had no idea carjacking was illegal, or I had no idea that bribing a politician was against the law. This was a truly victimless crime. Shaneen Allen wasn't planning on committing a violent crime. It's not like the law enforcement officer who pulled her over for the improper lane change prevented her from committing an armed robbery or a murder. She had that firearm for self-defense. She had been mugged in Philadelphia in her home. She became a concealed carry holder. And as you say, this was a mistake. And, it's the only person beyond the prosecutor, and I apologize, I should have mentioned this earlier because you mentioned this in your story, the gun control advocates. They're the ones who are saying, yeah, she deserves to go to trial here. Brian Miller of Heeding God's Call, I think it's very... It's just amazing to me that he can tell us, how to heed God's call. Apparently, God wants us to put Shaneen Allen behind bars for a period of time because he says in this piece of the Courier Post that she should have known. And these are longstanding laws, and the state's gun laws work. Quote, New Jerseyans are loath to give up their relative safety to make it easier for out-of-towners to carry handguns in the Garden State. Can't blame them.
Well, he actually says that this prosecution will improve public safety because the publicity surrounding it is going to discourage other Pennsylvanians from coming across the river with their guns. Which is completely absurd because it's not as if New Jersey has seen a rash of crimes committed by people like Shaneen Allen, people who are law-abiding gun owners who made a simple mistake, which apparently happens with some frequency in New Jersey. And the previous district attorney in Atlantic County was much more inclined to cut people some slack in that circumstance when you had tourists coming in who didn't realize that their carry permits did not apply in New Jersey. Instead of trying to send them to prison, he allowed them to go through some kind of diversion or even drop the charges. So why the current district attorney is so gung-ho about putting Shaneen Allen in prison, I'm not sure. But the deterrence notion doesn't fly. I mean, it's not just anyway. It would not be fair to say, to deter other people who might be dangerous, we're going to put this poor woman who made an honest mistake and is not a threat to anyone, we're going to put her in prison to deter other people. That clearly is not just anyway. But even leaving that aside, the idea that this sort of case is going to deter real violent criminals is just silly. I mean, they're not obtaining their carry permits, and they're not worried about whether, if they did obtain a carry permit, they wouldn't worry about whether it applied, in New Jersey or not. I mean, it's just absurd to think that that's going to help reduce violent crime.
It is. I mean, particularly given that, again, this is not only the law for out-of-state residents, it's the law for New Jersey residents, too. New Jersey is home to 5 of the 50 most violent cities in the country: Camden, Trenton, Newark, Jersey City, Patterson, Bridgeport, New Jersey's up there, too. There's a lot of very high crime places in the Garden State, and these gun laws don't appear to be impacting those violent criminals, Jacob, from carrying their firearms and using them to commit violent crimes. It is an absurd argument. So if these gun laws haven't, made Camden less Camden, I fail to see how sending Shaneen Allen to prison for 3.5 years is really going to send a message to the violent criminals in New Jersey.
No, I don't see it either, and I hope that the jury will also see how ridiculous that is. There's going to be a limit on what her attorney can say to them. He can't say, this is a stupid law, so just ignore it, which is really what he ought to say. But he can say she made a mistake. I don't know if in New Jersey they allow you to say what the sentence is, because that would be a huge deal. If the jury knew there's a mandatory minimum of 3.5 years and that there's a maximum, including the ammunition charge, of 11.5 years, right? If the jury knew that, I think there's no way they would convict. But I'm not sure that he's allowed to say that.
I don't know. The other, I guess, avenue here for Shaneen Allen, and it's not great. I mean, the prosecutor and the judge, she was accepted into this pretrial intervention program, but the prosecutor refused to allow her to get into it. He wanted to send this case to trial. Governor Christie at some point could step in if she is convicted, and I think even before now, or even before conviction, he could step in and say, no, there are no charges here. Would that be something that if the jury were to actually convict Shaneen Allen, would you think there'd be a wise move for the governor to step in and pardon Shaneen Allen?
It would be wise, not just in terms of justice, but probably politically wise for him if he's looking to run for the Republican presidential nomination. It would help shore up his conservative credentials, you would think. And it, plainly is an injustice, and it's just the sort of thing that the pardon and clemency powers were intended for. A case where the law is just sort of applied in a blind way, and it results in this terrible injustice where this innocent woman will be put away for years. That does seem like the sort of situation that was contemplated when they gave governors clemency powers.
Talking with Jacob Sullum from Reason Magazine, and as you said, Jacob, this is. Shaneen Allen is not the only individual facing charges like this. In fact, Evan Knappen, her attorney, has said that he has 5 other cases right now in Atlantic County where the exact same thing's going on. This is the same county, it's the same prosecutor, same judge, too, actually, that allowed Baltimore Ravens running back Ray Rice to enter pretrial intervention and avoid going to trial for the assault charges he was facing for allegedly knocking his then-fiancée, now wife, unconscious, which is, something else that has been brought up here, that the prosecutor seems more willing to go after Shaneen Allen than going after a guy who actually stood accused of a crime of violence.
Right. I I mean, they said the assistant prosecutor said this was too serious a crime, that Shanine Allen's crime was too serious a crime for diversion. And it's obviously not true. If you're letting violent criminals go into diversion, she's not violent. She's not a threat to other people. And it's also not true given the past practice of letting people in precisely this situation avoid a trial. So there clearly has been a change in policy, a change in attitude, and somebody wants to make an issue of this just to uphold New Jersey's way. Right? They've got the one right way to approach guns, and everybody should know it. I hope that the jury ends up acquitting her, and I hope that this whole thing calls attention to New Jersey's insanely draconian laws that people may not be aware of otherwise. This particular case illustrates them, but just with a more general idea that you need special permission from the government to exercise your constitutional rights, and they decide whether you get to carry a gun or not based on totally subjective, arbitrary criteria. That in itself, it amazes me that an appeals court was able to uphold that law in the face of the Supreme Court decisions on the Second Amendment to say, well, it does protect you. The Second Amendment does guarantee a right to bear arms. It says it right there. Bearing is carrying. That's not complicated, but it can needs to be regulated. It's okay if the government regulates it. Well, if you regulate it to the point where the government's power to say who gets to carry is almost completely discretionary, that's obviously a problem. If that were applied to any other constitutional right, people would recognize it as a problem, right? If you needed to get a license to speak, for example, and the licenses were only doled out on a need-to-speak basis, right, that would obviously be a constitutional issue. So how they can give New Jersey's law, this policy for carry permits a pass is beyond me.
Yeah, me too. Well, her trial scheduled for October the 6th. Would love to have you back on if there's any news before then or that week, Jacob. And thank you again for writing about Shanine's case.
Sure, thank you.
All right, Jacob Sullum joins from Reason here on NRA News, Cam and Company.